Yeah, it should.
Okay. Welcome to the Yuki D and Jinx show. We have got an amazing show for you guys today. It's going to be black belt level Dork Tower stuff.
But who are you?
I'm Brian Snowdy. This is
Julie Barrow.
Yes.
Thank you for showing up both here and also live on Yuki D and Jinx YouTube channel. For tonight, we are here at our sponsors, the Palace Theater Art Bar in Georgetown. Thank you guys for hosting us once again with the Yuki D and Jinx show. Our drink of the night, since it is a full bar, is called the Blue Manna, and it is a blue coat American gin with a dash of coconut syrup, orange bitters, and a dash of blue curacao. And I hope I pronounced that right. You think so? So it's,
I don't even know what curacao is.
Let's not go there. Okay. No, anyway, we have the Blue Manna. That is the drink of the night. But before we get started with our guests here, we're just going to do a couple of quick announcements. Next month, on July 3rd, we have two guests, Ben Thompson and Steve Belladin.
Yes, from Badass History Books and Badass of the Week.
Yep. And
there will be a book signing, too.
So that'll be Tuesday, as we always do this every first Tuesday of the month, July 3rd. Come on down here or tune in live. Meanwhile, we also want to give the heads up, which does roll into what we're doing this evening. Later on this month, Brian and some of our guests here, we're going to be at Met. But before we gathering convention, it's Thursday, June 20th to Sunday, June 23rd. Is it at the Washington State Convention Center?
Yes, Washington State Convention, 4 days of madness.
Oh my God. I think there's something like 20 or 21 artists that are going to be there. So we wanted to give a big shout out because we know for sure Brian's going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be signing there. Let's just say that. And finally, Yuki and Jinx is opening up for sponsorship. If you'd like to sponsor us, sponsor the show, get your little logo, your business, whatnot. Show with us, have us talk about you in the beginning of the show. Feel free to email us at yukiandjinx@gmail.com. Anyway, on that note, I'd like to introduce our guests. So back in, 1993, there was a game that exploded out of Seattle on top of the big grunge scene in Starbucks, and it was called Magic: The Gathering. It's a trading card game. Back then, the artists, majority of them were unknown and local. Many of them were students of Cornish College of Seattle, Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle, and were picked up by an art director over at Wizards of the Coast by the name of Jesper Myfors. Then on, the game has been growing and changing and shaping over the last 25 years. And the cast of characters working on the game in terms of the art has changed as well. Mm-hmm. So on our tables here, we have old school and new school. Old school is Jesper Myfors and Drew Tucker, some of the original artists on the game. And then new school is Kieran Yanner and Tyler Jacobson, some of the newer artists on the game. And we were going to talk a little bit about...
Julie, you left out us. We're old school.
Oh, I'm not old.
It's like the pincher claw and the crusher claw on both sides of the new kids.
I know.
Is that what this is?
Yes,
it is.
Now we're going to take you down.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Brian and I actually also worked on the game back in the day. We were, what they call the vintage artists. Mm-hmm. Coming out back in 92, 93, also brought on by Jesper Myfors. So that's what we'll talk about. But we could go down any avenue tonight. We could
we
talk
don't
about,
just have to talk about magic.
No, we don't have to talk about magic cards, magic art per se. We can just travel on down. First, though, I want to ask everyone real quickly, what are you, you all work as illustrators. I think I know you both work actively as illustrators. I think you still work as an illustrator, correct? And then you have been doing illustration off and on as well. But what are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working on a game called Luna and the Moonling, which is a puzzle game, a very pleasant, pretty puzzle game. It's on Steam right now for Mac and PC. We'll be launching on all the consoles, hopefully in few months, maybe by the end of the year. a lot of things to take into account when you're doing those sorts of things. And I'm also helping my wife with her store called Owl's Folly, which is in Issaquah. And we're going to be running a lot of events there, asking magic artists to come out and teach classes. So if anyone's interested, let me know.
And we'll post, by the way, we'll post URLs on the YouTube page later on.
And Owl's Folly
really cool.
is a do-it-yourself crafting studio.
Oh, sweet.
Cool.
So you don't have to have your own place or your own supplies. You can just come in there and work.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Awesome. And then Drew, what are you working on?
Yeah, there you go, right?
Another beer, Drew.
No,
He's working on a computer.
sweet. No, I'm actually before I came here, I was putting off painting. No, I've got a couple of NDAs which I can't talk about, which is too bad for me. But I'm continually doing stuff with Onyx Path Publishing.
Onyx Path?
So yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sweet.
But yeah, there's a couple of card designs that I've got that I've been working on. But yeah, stuff I can't talk about, which is I guess that's okay.
Well, NDAs are,
Yeah.
that's a reality in the business. Sometimes you can't talk about what you're working on right now.
I do have a strange children's story book that's not for kids necessarily. Kind of more for my kids.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, sort of.
Will you be
Yeah.
posting anything on your website for
Yeah.
that?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I've got dolls and stuff worked out because, I couldn't figure out the characters at the moment. So it's weird. But that's yeah, I'll shut up.
So there's no timeline for that, right?
No, it's a very open-ended.
Okay.
Labor of love.
Labor
Yes.
of love. Yeah, there's a couple of those, though.
Very cool. And then Kieran, I know you were doing a stint as an art director for a while, but are you freelancing now?
Yeah, so I was working on the style guide for the Magic the Gathering Planeswalkers mostly, and now I'm doing that freelance. Daniel Ketchum has taken over art direction for that, and he's working on a whole bunch of stuff during that. I'm also working on some stuff for D&D, continuing on card art, and then I'm started up a mentorship with Jason Felix for Visual Arts Passage.
Nice.
So that's different because I've never done it before.
Are you guys doing that
It's online.
online?
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. Again, different. Yeah, besides that, I mean, yeah, just kind of, yeah.
It's interesting because I've known Jason for 22 years. I met him in San Francisco a million years ago at the San Francisco, what was the comic convention there? WonderCon. That's where I met him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had a table next to each other and we just hit it up. He's great.
He was the second.
So hi, Jason. If you're watching.
Hi. He was the second, probably the second artist that I got to know. The first one was Christopher Shy, and he actually brought me into the industry. And Jason was a good friend of his, and so I knew Jason for years before I came over to. Well, actually, for a couple of years before I came over to the States, and then was in the States for quite a while, and then met him first time at one of the GPs. So that was weird because you meet someone for the first time.
Well, that's
known
like-
them for a decade online.
That's how I met Drew. Was we've
Yeah,
known each
yeah,
other for
yeah,
over
yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
So before
Same.
we get sidetracked, I want to make sure that we ask Tyler what he's up to these days.
It sounds like Kieran and I are up to the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working on Magic. I'm doing some style guide stuff, but I'm also doing cards and other things I can't, talk about. But I do a ton of work for D&D as well. So I'm working on that, and I just wrapped up an Elric book.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm jealous.
I did a cover and 6 interiors for an Elric book.
I'm even more jealous.
It was fun.
Of course it's got to be fun.
Were you working
Elric.
with Moorcock?
Yeah, I'm working with Centipede Press, and it's sort of indirectly working with everyone, but the AD there. And it's been awesome. And then I think I might be getting into some online school stuff as well, but we'll see where that goes.
Cool.
But right now it's mostly just Magic and D&D.
Very
Right
cool.
on.
Well,
Julie, what are you doing?
what am I doing? Oh, God, let's not go there.
Why not?
I'm
It's gonna be
here.
fun.
I'm doing this right
Okay.
here, right now. I don't
All right.
want to take up the air.
All right.
I want these guys to talk. So, I mean, one of the reasons we brought you guys on is we wanted to see kind of what your thoughts were on the differences between working on something like Magic the Gathering, working as an illustrator back in the early 90s, and how that's changed. And if there's things that people wish could have stayed the same, had changed, had been around back in the day, you know. And I know, of course, Jesper had a lot of challenges as both artist and art director back in the day, because you guys were, for one thing, you were technically limited. I mean, you had a flatbed scanner that couldn't handle anything bigger than 5x7.
No, it was 11
by
8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the computer I was using was a Centris 650.
Yeah.
And I was using Photoshop 2. Now remember, when I was doing one filter, it took 23 hours to render.
Back when they had what was it, 500 megs was the hard drive?
It was.
Yeah.
It was long work just because of the technological limitations at the time.
And so one of the things I do remember from back then was being limited. I mean, well, not very many people did digital art, but also there was the limitations of the scanner itself.
Yeah, and I wouldn't hire digital artists, not at all, because back then, if you hired, all digital artists looked like two things, and that was Bad Poser and Kai's Power Tools, and Bryce, 3 things.
Yeah.
And that's all I ever saw. I got portfolio after portfolio of this, so I just made a no digital art rule, which I then broke because I had to, because of deadlines, but
Right.
yeah. And that's changed, because by the time I left there in my second stint, I was fine with digital art, because you could actually, it was art at that point. Someone's vision could actually show through. It wasn't a bunch of tools layered on top of each other.
Right.
Like baby's first project.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Rick Barry was he producing around digital stuff around that time, or
I don't.
I don't think he was.
Mixed media stuff was amazing.
No, he had, I used to play with my kids. It was it was a fractal generator builder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
I know it was doing something.
But he was
Crazy
doing
stuff.
digital stuff then? Because I didn't know he was.
He was
You
kind
know,
of a bit of a pioneer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That stuff,
Huh.
yeah.
I wish I remembered his name, but I met
I know he was
an early
associated
pioneer in
with it.
digital art who blew me away, and this was back in the Poser Bryce days. And he said it took him 60 hours. He showed me this piece he did that was a jungle piece, and it looked fantastic. It looked like a painting back in the days before it actually looked like that. And so that was what opened my mind to, okay, maybe digital art's okay.
Right.
But it didn't change my rule. Oh, and the other thing is winged lions. Winged lions and biker babes. I never need to see another. Ever. Those are the only portfolios I
What
ever
about winged
got.
cats?
Yeah.
Winged cats too. That's
Okay,
and
yes.
mostly lions or lion cubs. And 80% of the portfolios I get that, or a bad anime.
Now back then, it was a lot harder to find illustrators willing to do magic art than, of course, it is now. Every young artist and illustrator wants to get at least one card in that game. But back then, you were fighting just to get people on the docket. I mean, you were fighting to get artists on board. And
Well, there were a few problems that I was facing. The first was I really, really wanted magic to be a unique voice. I didn't want it to be an echo of other things. So I made a point of not hiring any of the Dungeons and Dragons artists, even though I love their art. I didn't hire Ian Miller, even though he's my favorite artist ever, because they had already set the look of other products. And I didn't want magic to be an echo of other projects. So I really tried to find new artists. Originally, magic was going to be using secondary rights. So like you'd see an old Frazetta Molly Hatchet cover or something, and that would be the magic card.
Oh, okay.
That was the direction they wanted to go until I talked them out of it. I said,
Interesting.
look, just give me $50 a piece and some stock in the company and promise me a royalty, and I'll get you your art. That's what I did.
it almost sounds like the Star Wars story with the music. Remember when they were originally going to be using like Beethoven and things like that for Star Wars, and then John Williams came on board and said, no, let me do the music. I promise it's going to be amazing. And so they were like, all right, fine. And
He always changed everything
Yeah.
as soon as he showed up.
yeah,
Oh, and so then the artists that I did approach that were established who hadn't set a look in gaming, one of them I met at Gen Con, and I was a big fan of hers, a huge fan. I gave her the whole spiel. She didn't look at me once while I was telling her. And when I finished, she looked up at me and said, come back when you're a real company. And
Wow.
then a year later, I got a portfolio from her wanting to work on magic. I'm afraid I couldn't hire her. I had artists who were loyal to me at that time that
Right.
needed the work.
Well, that's where I met you. It's at Norwest Con. And I walked up, and I was a product illustrator at an ad agency at the time. And I was painting pictures of keyboards and joysticks and stuff like that. And I walked up to Jesper, and Showed him my portfolio, and he goes, "You have the weirdest portfolio I've ever seen in my life."
Have the weirdest
He goes, "But you know what? We're going to work on this card game. I think it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm calling you." I said, "Okay, here's my card," and he did. That's how I got in.
Well, how did you, I know you brought a lot of people on board. Like, you actually approached people versus getting the portfolios in. And I know you approached myself and a lot of other folks just because we went to school with you. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is Jesper and I actually grew up in the same neighborhoods. As kids. And
same with Tom Warnerstrand.
Tom was down the street. And so I remember actually physically being surprised, like looking over in class, in my design class, my first year at Cornish, and there's Jesper sitting there, and I'm like, hey, and we grew up down the street from each other, so it's like, oh, hey, and a lot of the artists you pulled from the stock at the art school, including I think that's where you picked up Drew, correct?
Yeah.
Drew and Andy, who's out there in the audience.
Andy Russo over here.
Hi, Andy.
And Drew actually was a very interesting artist to bring on board because his look and feel was so different and oftentimes very controversial.
Which is why I loved it.
Really?
No, I mean, like, working White Wolf was like that.
Drew, you're good. We love you.
No, I'm awesome.
That was the shit I was like, blown away by.
I always think that's weird. Because it was as far as getting in, it was Sandra, or Sandra Everingham. She was in, I think she was in like one of my watercolor classes or something.
Yeah, was that Jay Cohn?
Say what?
Was it Jay Cohn who was doing the?
He was
because he was our art teacher as well.
Yeah,
we took watercolor from him.
And she had, asked if I'd make a portfolio or something. So I arted something up and like it was bound and all that stuff that you do, and then I never saw it again, which is awesome for me. But that's how I kind of I got there.
One of the major differences I think in the early days of Magic was that as an art director, I was trying to create an entire world that people could get lost in. I was not at all interested in making a corporate-friendly product for shareholders. So I picked a very diverse base of art. I would rather have had it that there were some people that hated the art or loved the art rather than people going, I've seen this before. So I deliberately tried to find artists that were not in the style that's prevalent in gaming because I wanted it to be different. I mean,
well, you actually designed the back of the card. I mean, I don't know how many people know that you were the one
and the
who
original
came
borders.
Right. A lot of people don't realize that you did that, and you actually designed the whole idea of the collectability of these cards. I remember you were talking about early on about how you wanted these to be collectible, like for people collected based on the art.
That was the goal of the entire company. I don't think I could take any particular credit for that.
Oh, but you did, don't you? I'm just kidding.
Come on, calm down, Julie.
I'm kidding.
What's in that tab?
And so the whole idea was that the player was the wizard. That you were the player, and you would pick your spells based on what school of magic you liked. And the idea that you were playing a pre-established character was the furthest thing we wanted, because we wanted players to have direct agency in the game world, not pretending to be a planeswalker. All of the directions that they went after it went corporate, I lost interest in it. I mean, I wish them well. It's still my legacy, but I moved on to other things just because I really have no interest in making shareholders rich when I'm not getting a cut. And when they took the artist royalties, that was my time to go.
Interesting. Now, we have two people here
that didn't get royalties.
And after that, and after all this stuff. So, why don't you guys tell me about your experiences and how'd you get involved? Yeah, how'd you get involved?
What made you want to get involved in that world?
And which one of you is going to go first?
You want to go first?
Whoever's the most drunk should go first, and then the other person will catch up at that point.
So I came through D&D. So when I got out of art school, I was going to either go into video games, which I applied to a variety of game companies with whatever my portfolio was at the time. It's probably embarrassing. But none of those worked out. But then I got a call from John Shindaddy, who was the art director of D&D at that time. and he asked me to do just some small pieces in, I think it was Dragon Magazine at the time. This is like 2000.
So when they still had Dragon Magazine.
Yeah, when they still had it.
Yes.
I think it was digital at the time. Yeah. So I did like a few pieces, but I did D&D for a few years, and because they're in the same building on the same floor, Jeremy Jarvis saw my work, and that's what he asked me to do like a couple. He called test pieces for Magic, and that's kind of how I got in there. And that was about, I think 2012 was my first Magic cards. That's how I snuck in the back door.
Interesting. Okay. Kieran, batter up.
So
Is this an embarrassing story?
well, it can be. Little stories.
Okay, really?
Okay.
You dig deep enough, you're going to
especially when I
find
tell
some bedrock, right?
Actually, no, yeah, very similar story. Actually, started off in D&D. I think Dawn actually took me up
Dawn Mirren?
for D&D. And I remember actually, was it Hex? Was there a game called Hex? It was a game for
I
Wizards.
think that
called
was the
Hex or
one that
something.
Eric Geist also worked on.
Yeah, and Christopher Shai also worked
Yeah.
on that. And I was about to do a couple cards on that, and then Wizards ended up canceling the card game. And then I think around that time, Jeremy actually got in touch with me about that.
Was this before or after you moved to the States?
This was after.
Okay.
Yeah. So so going back to D&D.
So
the
tell
way-
everyone where you're from, Kieran.
I'm from Australia.
From Down Under?
Yeah.
Do
Down
people
Under.
ever sing that song and like play the little
I do. I do it.
Do you carry a big Bowie knife
Land
with
from
you?
Down
or-
Under?
Yeah.
No, I do like Men at Work.
At one point
I like
in
Men at
his
Work
house,
too.
I put on Men at Work for an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
So actually, D20, the OGL, the Open Gaming License System that came out with 3.5, around that time is when I got into illustration, and that opened up a huge door for like a lot of people. A lot of small publishers came up and were able to take on more illustrators, and that's kind of where I got into that. And then slowly through that, got into D&D, and then kind of got into Magic there. But I took a break from Magic because, yeah.
How do you feel about those early Magic cards that you did?
How does Jeremy feel about those cards? I
I feel like there's a prompt here.
yeah, I
There's a
was.
story
Let's hear
that I'm
it.
trying to
Come
get
on.
out of him.
So I was
Yes.
working for Decipher at the time, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I was 25, and could have put more into the work that I did,
As many of us can, by the
Yes.
way.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Yes,
haunted
exactly.
by images.
Oh my God, yeah.
So am I. I'm
Deadlines as the
horrified by the
director,
stuff I
have 10 minutes to
did.
do a piece.
yeah,
And those pieces are out there now. That's an example of my work.
yeah.
10-minute piece I had.
Yeah. So I actually there was an interesting conversation through email, and I didn't get any more commissions.
Oh, did you get fired too?
Yes.
See, I got
Canceled.
I actually got legitimately fired from Wizards of the Coast. So that's why I was asking you that.
Not by me.
Not by you, no, by Matt Wilson. But it actually was, I turned in a piece
I
of
didn't realize
yeah,
that was.
turned in a piece of crap. It really was. And he was like, what the hell? And
Same.
Yeah.
So it's fair.
it was
It's
fair enough.
It's fair.
But he was
Yeah.
so afraid that I was mad at him that I went to a party a few weeks later and he saw me and turned white and ran. And I
Introverted
was
artists
yeah.
kind of.
So I had to so I actually thought, this is interesting. So I actually cornered him and he looked, like someone was like this. And I'm like, dude, I'm not mad at you.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I said, no, you had every right to fire me. That was a piece of shit. I'm so sorry. It was. When I took the cards on, I had a day job at the time. And
You were working at Adobe at the time, weren't you?
no, this was right before Adobe.
Okay.
But yeah, I was working tech support, which in Seattle means you're working 80 hours a week. And when I took that job, when I took his job, the magic art, my schedule changed right after that. And I didn't know how to I was afraid if I said I can't do these cards, that I would never get work again. So I tried anyway. I failed miserably. And I'm actually very glad. He probably saved me from an embarrassment. I mean, so.
But this is a good lesson, kids.
Yes.
Yes. Look right into the
very
camera,
good lesson.
Tyler. Right into the
If
camera.
you have a bad week and turn in a piece of shit, you could potentially end your career.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Or at least put it on the hiatus for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Year or two.
How did you redeem yourself?
So I ended up branching off into
What,
the computer
Mark?
games industry. And then that was kind of history in itself, or whatever. I actually took a class with Donato.
Oh,
and-
who's an excellent teacher, by the way.
Yes.
Did you do it online or did you go in?
I did it online through Rebecca Gay's.
Rebecca's at Smart School?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I took 2 semesters with him. The second semester I didn't do too much work because I was doing other stuff at the time. I was working at Microsoft at the time on stuff, but I had a bit of a existential crisis, and
We all
I
do.
needed some help in a new direction, and there's copious amounts of praise I can give to him, but there was some reaffirmation of things that I wanted to do and techniques I used, and he just kind of re-inspired me to.
Were you working traditionally at the time?
No, I stopped working traditionally probably just before I left Decipher back in 2005. That was when I worked in the computer games industry.
But the thing that I want to bring up, yeah, he does digital. But you know what?
Yeah, it's wonderful, by the way.
I want to say this
You're not
because
Bryce and Poser.
Yeah,
it's
no,
true.
awesome.
Y'all are talking over me, and I'm the only girl here, so I'm feeling a little. No, I'm just kidding. No, what actually the key thing is because Bastien Lecouf de Harm, who's also a wonderful person, amazing artist. He's been working on the Gods game.
Sweetheart.
Wonderful guy. One of the things he always wanted to point out to people, he does work digitally, but he can paint. He can paint exactly the way he works digitally, and that's the key thing I want to bring up about you guys. You both know how to paint.
Yeah.
Well, that's the case with most digital artists
Yeah.
I've worked with.
Todd Lockwood is the same way, right? I mean, the guy's brilliant.
Well, you would be surprised, though. I actually, I've talked to some of the Smart School instructors and some other students of theirs who learned how to digitally paint, had never picked up a pencil, and John Shinhetti actually has talked quite a bit about this, about how kids think that they don't have to learn how to do anything traditionally, but it really helps to know these
They
things.
don't have to, but it does help.
Yeah.
Having access to multiple mediums is like, whether it's even photography.
Because if you do digital,
Yeah.
people will always say to you, "But can you paint?"
Yeah,
And the reality is, you guys, I know you guys can.
To me, it's do you have an idea?
Yeah, I've never cared how you got to the idea or how you created the imagery, but I've always been a big advocate for having a good foundation in traditional media because, I mean, all the digital tools are somewhat simulations of some form of traditional media. So when I started learning Photoshop, I trained in oils and all my illustrations were in oils, so I was like, what tool in this program is going to simulate what I want to do? So if I want to do if I was in oils, I'd be doing a glaze. What, I don't know, blending option of this layer is going to give me something that's like a glaze. And that sort of helped me create a toolkit or I guess a grammar of illustration that brought me into digital work. All my work's digital now, but I still oil paint
Right.
when I have the time.
Gotcha. Okay, we talked shop for a while. Let's tell some crazy stories. You guys up for that?
Kieran has lots of them.
So back in New Jersey, there was a moment at Walmart.
Stop. At least one or two.
Just two?
Sweet Walmart.
Well, we can, and Jesper and I can
was a
always
great
go toe to toe when it comes to childhood. We can always tell the childhood stories if anyone ever wants to hear
But
them.
we should probably mention that Brian Snowdy grew up in the same neighborhood as Chris Rush, and they didn't know each
That's
other.
true.
Oh, that's true.
Like one street away from each other.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, okay, here's the story, everybody. So Chris, Russ, and I never met each other, but we went to the same high school, but not at the same time. Chris Rush was dating Lisa Williford down the street, and I used to practically live at Richie, Trace, and Lisa's house, and we'd play Dungeons and Dragons together. And I lived on this corner, on Fenhold, and on the back street, which I can't remember the name. Chris lived in the last house. And years later, we did a signing together. We'd met each other at the when I met you. We met Chris, and we did the signing together at this little comic book place in Bellevue called Darkholder Comics.
I remember that.
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
Remember that
so we're
place.
sitting together and like, yeah, where'd you grow up? Blah blah blah. You know, I lived in I lived in Lancaster, California. So when did you live there? Oh, from 1980 to. I said, get out of here. Where'd you live? He goes, I lived in so and so. And my backyard neighbor was this guy. I said, my pops used to. They worked at FAA together, and they'd carpool every year for 5 years. And he goes, yeah, Lisa Williford was my first girlfriend. I said, I lived at their house practically. And his daughter's name was Sierra, which was my niece's name, and they're almost the exact same age. That's a true story.
He was annoyed that other people started naming their kids Sierra. I remember he said that.
Yeah, so Chris Rush and I literally lived a block away, never met each other.
Yeah, well, Jesper's a little older than me because, I'm 20.
We only ended up in college at the same time because I decided to go back late.
Yeah, you went back late. I went just a year late, but I think you decided to go back to college or something. Didn't you go to...
I told a customer what I thought of them, and that
Tower.
necessitated...
You used to work at Tower Records,
that necessitated
right?
Yeah, you worked
Yeah.
at Tower Records in
needing a new
Bellevue.
career.
That's right, because you were the one who... Oh, never mind. I shouldn't say. I'm gonna spill
we're gonna
some
get
beans
in
or I'm
trouble
gonna
for that. Yeah.
No, but we grew up down the street from each other. He lived on... I lived off of, I think, 83rd or something, and you lived off of 88th, I think. And that's when... and then Tom lived down the street. And you used to organize these hide-and-seek games. He was one of the
neighborhood
older
games.
kids in the 70s. So he would organize them, and that's how I remember him. He was one of the guys that would tell everybody what we were going to do and how far all the rules were, how far we could hide, far away we could hide, and everything like that. So that's how I remember him. And then Tom now totally denies that he and Bia knocked me down on their bikes. Bia did it, but Tom was there. But they apologized to me later.
Bia's my brother.
Bia's his little brother. I was younger, so we'd be a little gaggle of kids walking down the street at school. School is really close by the way. The junior high and the elementary school was only like a block away from his house.
Across the street from us.
Yeah, so I'd have to walk past there to get home, and Bia and they'd ride Huffies or something.
Yeah,
His
they were
brother and
Huffies.
Tom would ride these Huffies around, and so they would try to scare the littler kids, and by kind of peeling out in front of them. Well, Bia misjudged and peeled out and caught his bike wheel into my foot or leg or something, and we went down together and tore my leg apart. And then they both freaked out and biked away.
So I should point
So
out...
they left a crippled Julie laying in the middle of the street
Neither
there
Tom nor
in
my
Mercer
brother
Island.
were bullies. They were just showing
No,
off,
they
and
were
it
just
went
showing. They
wrong.
weren't horrible people, but they freaked out because I was like screaming and crying, and so they ran away, or they biked away, and so I made a mention about when that happened in front of your house. I didn't know it was those two until Bia was like, "That was you," and I was like, "Yeah, dude, I had to walk back to the school to go to the nurse so she could bandage my leg." Before going home again, because I was
They
bleeding
left her
all over
just
the
laying
place.
wounded right there.
Yeah, they had
in the
to
middle
pick
of the
gravel out of my leg and everything. So, and Tom was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "As you should be," And then I didn't care, but I have scars on my leg from that.
Stop it.
I do.
Well, show everyone.
Oh, I'd have to take my pants down and show. But
All right, Captain Quinn.
Yes, exactly. You're going to show the shark bite on you, Julie, and pull it up?
yeah. So, no, that was my one little Tom Weinerstrand story from growing up that I remember him. And I didn't even know it was him until Magic, and we were over at your house, and we were all sitting around talking about growing up in Mercer Island.
And another result of me having to grab artists from everywhere I could. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of artists turn me down, too, because, $50 for a startup is not that great.
But Cornish art students, That's a lot of money.
was
And,
all
and
this
remember,
money.
this was 1993, where color printers were still really expensive. So even just getting color work reproduced for a portfolio was valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like today when you can.
That
Everyone
was-
has one.
That was better than Steve Jackson games when I got into it. It was $10 an inch.
That's why I didn't. Work
Oh,
for that.
wow.
Yeah, I applied.
And that was in the book.
You're a
not
bigger man than
actually-
me, Kieran.
$10 in it.
But what's so funny, the difference that I know between then and now is now they have a huge style guide. There's a lot of, the worlds are very developed. So the
Yes.
style guides for the artists is very, very thick and developed and organized and
Yeah.
set up and da-da-da-da. Whereas back in our day,
We didn't know what the hell a style guide
Though I was there for the first style guides.
yeah, well, I remember when you gave me my first cards, I don't know if this happened to you guys, and I didn't even understand what
yeah,
the game
phone
was.
call.
Oh, phone call.
And,
yeah.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
wrote
And,
them down on a piece of
like
paper.
that. What is the
he's
word?
like,
Like
okay,
that.
this one's a blue mana, and I said, what does that mean? He sort of explained the game, and I said, so what am I supposed to do?
I love that.
And he goes, I don't know, put some ocean or something.
So
in
let
it.
me defend myself here so that I don't come across as a complete idiot. My idea was that I hired competent people with a good imagination.
Then he hired
right?
me.
So here's the thing:
No, I'm just
if
kidding.
I were to art direct that set, every card, fully, it would look like a Jesper Myfors set.
Right.
But I didn't want it to look like a Jesper Myfors set. I wanted everybody to define their areas of the world. So I tried to give as little instruction as possible. So it's usually the name of the card,
Right.
what color the magic was, and what the effect of the card was.
Yes.
And then I would let them go. That was it. They needed the dimensions, and I said, focus on a single item, because when this card is reduced down to the size of a card, I want people who are walking by to be able to look down and see what the objects on the card are, so that they can be intrigued. I
Right.
don't want them to walk by and see a blur of mud and color that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Well, and to give you credit, you did ask for sketch. It wasn't like he never asked for sketches, because he
No, I
always
asked,
got
sure.
the sketches
Yeah.
from us. But it was this, my first card was clone, and I didn't know what to do. And you're like, I don't know, put an ocean in there and a couple of guys staring at each other. I'm like, well, what kind of guys? Knights or something. Just,
And I
just-
wasn't being lazy. I wanted to know what her vision for it was.
So I was like, okay. So I did it and sent it in, and at the time there wasn't any, like you can only paint in acrylics or. And at the time I didn't paint. I was a printmaking student, so I wasn't even painting at the time.
Colored pencils, and they were
I
a
did-
pain to scam.
I know. And in fact, that's what Sandra was like. Would you please learn how to paint, for Christ's sake? And
Oh, did I have problems there? I came in one time with the painting, and by the way, I knocked on Peter Atkinson's basement, the glass door at the bottom of his house, and Sandra answered it. Like, oh, hi, Brian. Here I'm turning in my stuff, and I showed it, and she goes, oh, Brian, that blue, it's not going to scan. She's like, God damn it! Why do you paint in that color blue? I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we paved the way on what not to do for
Yeah.
the rest of y'all.
Nothing like going out of.
Yeah, we screwed everything up so that you guys could be here. What?
I'm having trouble with that, because if something doesn't scan the right color, you color correct it, and then you reprint it.
Well, I didn't know nothing about that.
CMYK, there's blues and purples.
I know, but you can go back in and replace the colors, which is what I did on a lot of the old cards.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I didn't know nothing about that.
Working on black cards and working with purples. Always.
It was a horror show for you?
No, I mean, it's always in the flattening out.
Yeah.
Well, you've got
out of
that
gamut.
color. Yeah, you fly out of gamut.
Anything purple, it's just like, you're like, it looks great, and then
Yeah.
you're like, oh.
Well, the rule of thumb is just if your values are locked in, it really doesn't matter what the colors are, as long as your values are good.
I almost hit purple.
I struggle with my values.
There's no good value.
Yeah, purple is just one of those.
Calm down, Julie.
No, actually, for a moment, going back to Donato, I'm pretty sure a lot of his paint samples are actually CMYK set up for that.
Oh, really?
Which is
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the tricks, at least for digital work, when it is out of gamut and you can just see what it is, there's a hotkey for that. But a lot of the times it's just reducing saturation, because RGB can create saturations that are insane.
Right.
Purple will
Becomes
never
gray.
print.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that ultraviolet.
Yeah, I hear you. Yes. Many years ago, I showed a card to Alfredo Acala. Does anybody here know Alfredo Alcala?
I don't.
Brilliant
Sorry.
inker from the Philippines, and he was telling me I painted in a ultramarine blue. In the background, I put a little bit in there, and he goes, "Oh, Brian, you can't do that." And he's got this thick Filipino accent. He's like, "You cannot paint in ultramarine blue." And I'm all scared because I'm a big fan of his. And he's spitting out of his mouth, and I got spray from Alfredo Alcala on this side, and I'm standing over here, and yes. So I was horrified, never painted ultramarine blue since that day.
Such a great pigment, though.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Like how-
horrified
like
by it.
Another one of
Red
those ones that
Well,
like
blue, there's the sliverest of blues.
Yeah.
That is, can
I
exist.
got
So
Alfredo
design
Alcala
and-
spit on me,
yeah,
saying don't
yeah.
don't do it. So what are you gonna do?
Well, I suggest you pick up some tubes of.
Okay, I'll pick up. You know what, Tyler? For you, I'm picking up one tube.
They just won't print. You know they just won't print. Just
it's
go with
also
it.
honestly seeing a lot of like traditional pieces in person. Like you see them in person, you're like, holy crap!
Yeah.
Like because just the colors.
Yeah, it's so
you
bright.
don't
Everything.
see.
Yeah,
You don't see that back.
it doesn't reproduce
Yeah.
very well most of the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, that leaves a reason to actually see the originals.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's-
It helps
very
that
true.
market
Agreed.
as well.
Yeah.
And that's people who paint in original, not
Yeah.
digital.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, how do you deal
Nice.
with it though? Like being like primarily digital, or digital.
Well, how do I-
As that is, like if you were to sell, would you? Boy, I have no
Prints?
real words.
Are you talking
Yeah, I mean, like,
Everything's-
I mean,
I
do
mean,
you
it's
like
prints.
I mean, it's prints, but do you limit your print run, or is it the same issue?
Well, I mean,
Or what do you? Yeah,
I'm mostly
for originality
prints are
of the
at
print.
at
know?
magic events. So
Yeah, no,
they're
no,
not
no.
limited. I just do.
You just like
endless
Monotypes
prints.
are becoming a thing.
Yeah, I've noticed
Monotypes.
Oh yeah.
I've noticed a lot of people aren't interested in those. Like, it's either original that they'll pay
Yeah.
a good amount for, or print they will only accept a
Under
very
a
small.
certain-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
'Cause they
saw
know
prints
it's
as
print.
well, but I was just wondering if like there was a thought, at least within, the artist community that's mainly does digital, if there's a way to limit that, like print run or whatnot.
There are
like
actually-
like the original, like when people were doing prints, right?
One of the
Or,
things
like, when that
Bastion
came out.
does is he does
They would
a,
scratch the
he'll
plate at the
add
end.
something to his file, run one print, and then destroy that file.
Yeah.
So that's something
really?
that he
That's a
does.
one-to-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's how he would make something a one-shot deal. Was he would actually just destroy that particular file or that that layer, whatever, on the digital
Yeah.
side after it was printed, and he was happy with the proof.
See, I like that.
Yeah, that's
I'm
clever.
not saying that that's a good idea, but I like that idea.
No, I think it's good. I mean, because it is ones and zeros, and
Yeah.
everyone understands that.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's still like,
finding a way to make it limited is good.
Could probably like from 5 years ago and onwards,
not that I would.
everything is original because
Oh,
I
yeah.
have no idea where all those files are.
Yeah.
So oh gosh.
That's what I did with that.
So
So everything's an original.
Oh,
It's a digital original.
What?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Well,
Excuse me.
point.
What were you saying?
That human skull dead rat print I was working on at WotC when they were giving a shareholder tour. I did that's what I did. I erased the final file and I ran 15 prints.
Yeah.
I have 15 and there's no way to make
I
more.
remember that.
Exactly.
Hey, Dan, how we doing for time over here?
He says 5.
5 minutes?
Do you guys want to go for a couple more minutes? Because I know that you had a story. You two had a little, some sort of a
Oh, I don't know.
origin
Really?
story or something.
No. We just went to a GP
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
wound up at Walmart.
Did you guys
at 3
like-
a.m.
Oh, you wound up at Walmart. Okay, hold on a
Yeah,
second.
that's
And then
the,
it.
like, that's the story.
Doing that little extra.
It was snowing and it was dark.
It was it was actually it was
They're cool.
interesting. Yeah, that was.
Oh, like,
Yeah.
okay,
What was it?
let's hear it.
No, I mean.
Oh, it's not a real story at all.
No, it's
What?
just more of a muddled, like, what
Yeah.
was it, the Commons, or, no, what was the place?
I think it was the Commons, but
Something
like,
like
yeah,
that.
I know I had to go to get to my plane eventually, like at 4. So
Yeah,
yeah, we're at Walmart
we
late
got
at night.
hungry.
So you went to Walmart?
Yeah.
Because you were
Yeah,
hungry.
yeah,
It was
that's
the
about
first
it.
time
Yeah.
I went to Walmart, and I actually.
That was the first
texted
time you went to
Sarah.
Walmart.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the first time I went
Oh
to
my
Walmart.
God.
You lived here for 11 years,
Yeah.
probably.
Really, good job.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. What did you think about it? Then? Like,
It was big, and I was hungry.
Horrifying.
no, I mean,
They don't deal with food, so.
I have
it's
photos
probably
from
weird.
that on my phone,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah, I
know.
know. Yeah.
Was that your decision? to go to
Yeah, who decided?
No,
hey,
I
let's
was
go to
just, I
Walmart?
don't know.
Was that
I don't
Rev?
know. It was Rev. Yeah.
That was Rev's decision.
Yeah, it was Rev's decision to go to Walmart.
You
You're like, you've
Rev.
got enough time.
That was Rev's decision.
I can remember feeling
Oh, we have a
like
couple
panicked
extra
for a
minutes. You
second.
guys need to
I
explain
gotta-
some
to
stuff.
Oh,
sidebar
no,
on
it's
this.
better like
Okay,
this.
okay, I hear you.
I actually kind of through this conversation stumbled upon a weird legacy because you guys mentioned Bellevue. And when I was a kid, I lived in Bellevue, mid '90s, and the Dark Holder Comics was basically where I lived.
Get
It's
out
where
of
I
here.
learned to play Magic, D&D, and Warhammer 40K, which I got into pretty heavily.
So did you know Scott and Jason Hill?
I was a kid, so I do not recall any
Okay.
names, but I do recall the name of the store, and I was there all the time. I basically lived there. So there's
Did
some
you go to
juju
the-
going on.
That's
here.
weird.
Did you go to any of the signings or anything like that?
Oh man, so in that time I was
It's
probably
possible I might have
11?
seen you
I might have been
when you were an
11.
11-year-old kid and I was signing your card.
It's very possible. But it's weird that you mentioned that name and it struck me as, man, I hung out there all the time. I went to St. Louise, which is a little Catholic school in Bellevue.
Oh, yeah,
Near
I know
Crossroads.
where it is.
Right near Crossroads.
I know exactly where it is
So-
because I used to live near Crossroads when I was a kid going to art school at the Art Institute of Seattle.
Okay. I lived there just a few years and then we got restationed and I lived in California. But it's
Where in
very strange.
California did you live?
Bay
On
Area.
Fenhold near me and
Probably right near you. Probably right next to your house. No, in Alameda. I live in Alameda.
okay, yeah, far away.
Very
Wow.
strange little connection there.
That's where Alan
Dark Holder
Williams used to
Comics.
live.
Yeah.
Alameda.
Yeah.
He lived there before he moved over to, I think he's in Mississippi now.
Right.
Yeah. So you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, Drew,
No,
what's
no,
gonna
no,
be?
no.
Going.
Like multiple strange epiphanies and like relationships, and it doesn't matter. No, but like I signed. I can remember like the beginning. You know, and we'd go on like signing tours and stuff, and like I think it was like Kansas City or somewhere weird like that. I was signing somebody. It was like 10 or 11, and he came back like. Like 20 years later, right? Like with the same card to sign again. It was like freaking weird. And lovely. Like, yeah, which, is only loosely related to what you're saying. But like, yeah, I think it's
Well, that's like with
interesting how...
my business partner, when I
yeah,
first
how much
met
of an
him,
impact
he was like, oh my God,
things
I
have
love
been.
magic. This was like a few years ago. He's like, oh, I love magic. I used to play that when I was a kid. And of
Yeah, that
course I
freaks
was
me
like,
out all the time.
I was a kid when I
Yeah.
drew this stuff.
I was like, thanks.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. That just kind of like, it always freaks me out. Like,
So I would like to say
It's
something
big.
though,
Okay.
since I have a
Yes,
platform
Greg,
here.
Yes.
Time trip.
Musicians get royalties. Actors get royalties. Writers get royalties. Why don't illustrators get royalties? Why is this the occupation that brings in billions of dollars to companies all over the world? Why aren't we getting royalties like every other creator out there? It's complete bullshit. And it's being taken advantage of by the MBAs.
Well, I mean, I would say that largely, like when you're working on a game and for a company that large, you have so many people that are working on it.
That's what the suits will tell you. But you know what? The artists generate those images. What, you're going to put text on a T-shirt and sell it? It's the art that sells it.
No.
I'm buying you a pulpit tomorrow, yes.
Please do. I could use one.
Work for hire is definitely something we've all... come to
Sure.
terms with.
Look,
And I'm going to say this. The industry needs to unionize. Artists need a union. They really do.
But I will say it sucks. It does, especially when your stuff is front and center. But at the same time, there is a bunch of people in marketing, in sales, in brand. There's a lot behind that. I mean, you know that as well.
I do, and those are not careers that pay royalties.
By the
Being
way,
creative
Jesper,
pays royalties.
for the
Well-
record, and we're on camera.
Yeah.
I think
agree
like
with you.
musicians
Thank
get
you.
raping too, though.
Yep. There is no excuse. All it is making talentless suits and their shareholders richer, and it needs to stop. And the game industry in particular is ripe for it. It's bad in electronic gaming. It's bad in paper gaming. It's basically the rape of an entire class of creative people, and it needs to stop.
Okay, we're not going to end this with rape, so we got a couple minutes left. We're going to end it with a fun story.
By the way, I'm looking for corporate work if anyone wants to hire me.
Yeah. By the way, we are available for children's parties. By the way, yeah. Mhm. Okay, Tyler, batter up. I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Let's end this with a fun thing.
fun story.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Pull some swords out
I
or
really
something. I don't
enjoy
know.
sword fighting.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know.
And I've never actually
cameras.
seen you sword fight.
You've never seen me
No,
sword
because
fight?
you're always resting. But
I have
saw you
videos on YouTube of me sword fighting.
What
Shut up, what
Typically,
kind?
I'm getting my butt kicked.
What type of sword fighting?
It's medieval longsword.
I used to fence when I was younger.
Okay, I've done a little fencing, a little rapier, a little sword buckler, which is sort of I-33.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
We used to whittle, like, we'd steal our parents, or, you know, the broomsticks in the houses, and then we'd go in the back and, like, wrap them poorly with foam and then beat the shit out of
When I was a
each
little kid,
other,
it was
like-
all WWF wrestling.
Oh,
but
that's nice.
eventually,
Well, you got to
got
punch
to
people
medieval
too, but that
sword
was
fighting.
just different.
Is there something real?
It's less real than, I'd say, WWF.
So do you have, like, armor and stuff? Do you, like, armor up?
We wear modern fencing gear. If
So it's not
anyone's
shiny?
interested in This is a sidebar, of course, another sidebar. But it's not shiny. No, we wear just black modern fencing
Totally
gear.
disappointed.
With a big old mask.
Yeah.
You know.
I've seen bruises.
We
Yeah.
wear, yeah. We have lots
Oh
of
yeah, no.
bruises.
So like
I mainly protect my
regular,
hands.
like fencing, proper fencing.
Yeah, ours are
attire.
for the martial arts called HEMA.
Okay.
So it's
hacking.
historical European martial arts.
Yeah, it's Western stuff.
So it's Western stuff, but we wear black gear. That's sort of our tradition, I guess.
So no bogu or.
But it's it's called a gambeson. It's sort of a heavily padded cloth.
Similar to like kendo or just the
Actually,
just the lower layer.
that's the analog I use when I explain
Alright.
it. I say it's European kendo.
Oh, cool.
So we use steel swords. We use all similar padding.
Okay, I'm totally on your.
I had a friend who did that all across
So
Europe,
what do you-
recreating Vikings.
Right, and that's a whole different combat system. That's super cool.
Phil.
Phil. Yep. Hi, Phil.
Well, he won't be answering here.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that's my wild story. I like to sword fight, and I really love digging into the historical, archaeological aspect of medieval combat.
I do too. We're going to have a great conversation about weapons and armor
A lot
right
of
after the
swords,
show.
everybody.
Yes. I think, hey, Dan, we're going to bow out. Julie, do you want to have anything to say before we get out of here?
I don't know what to say after sword fighting. It's like, what do I say? Any final thoughts, words?
Last
So
spent
excited about swords
unspent
fighting, by the
rounds
way.
that need to be
Like-
fired?
I wish
There's
it
going
was
to be a
fun.
post show apparently about sword fighting.
Ah,
Okay.
How many of you actually have sword fought? You have?
Yeah.
You have? You have?
Oh, yeah.
I used to actually fence.
awesome.
Yeah.
Rapier
At,
or
rapier, yeah.
I did foil, not
the
rapier.
rhythm
Have you
is
seen
cool.
the new version of fencing though, the acrobatic one?
Shut up.
It's weird. I mean, now people are jumping all over it. It's more like Asian martial arts
show?
than fencing.
No, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
because people got bored with the standard, standard plays.
Yeah,
and
just-
so
Do you remember like
Very
Jim
good
Connor?
German
From like
tradition.
the
Too,
80s?
yeah. I actually like that movie.
I did too. I like.
So we all draw pen and sword.
Yes.
And sword.
So which is mightier?
Both.
It depends
Yeah,
on what
they're
you're
both.
using it for.
You have to have a pen and sword like crossed together, Julie. That's what I'm thinking.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap it
Dan,
up.
you want to bow us out now?
I thank you. Wait.
Yeah.
No, because we have to thank our guests.
Oh, yes, we do.
So thank you us, Tyler,
Thanks for having us.
Kieran, Drew, and Jesper. Thanks for coming on
It's
board
a
and
pleasure.
talking a little more about
Yeah.
what you guys do. Thanks to our sponsors. Thank you, the Palace Theater and Art Bar down in Georgetown. We will
Thank you,
be
guys.
Back next.
And by the way, Mark, before I go, I need one more. Yeah, thank you.
because that's so important.
It is.
So, all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, you tell me I'm going to do what I think. and-
Interrupt me?
Yeah,
Yes.
wakarimasu.